And welcome back. This is your man Warrior, and this is C3PO. We're going to go over his kit really quick. We're going to have some gameplay interlaced as well so we can see exactly what he's like in play. Looks like he's basically going to synergize with a ton of factions. Really, his primary objective is to bolster the Resistance, maybe some of the Jedi teams, but more often the Resistance and the Rebel teams. But he's going to be kind of a character that can go almost anywhere. He's going to be Galactic Republic, Rebels, Resistance, Droid. He's a support character, so pretty cool, and he's got a lot of synergy. Now, his basic is called Baffling Trick, and by the way, he's got two abilities, a basic and a special, and then he has 5, that's right, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 uniques. This is about the most convoluted kit you can get. I'm going to simplify really quick. Basically, he's got a basic and a special, and then he's got the ability to apply a positive buff to his team, to each person, and a negative debuff to the opponents. And the positive and the negatives can stack, go up 1, 2, or 3 as they gain this buff. The buff gets bigger and stronger. It gets a little buff icon, and it'll say 1, 2, or 3 over the buff icon. And so basically, it morphs or evolves into a greater debuff over time, or it gets a greater buff over time as they earn these things. We're going to talk about it, but I just want you to think of them as tokens, and you can basically put these tokens over your characters' heads and make them better, or you can put these tokens over the enemy and make them worse. These are cleansable debuffs, and these are buffs that can fall off, but we're going to go into all of it. Now, the basic says the C3PO inflicts confuse for 3 turns. This is the one that I talked about. That's the debuff that's going to be applied to the opponent. It says this cannot be evaded. If the target is already confused, the duration for all current stacks resets to 3 turns. So every time he does his basic, he's going to reset these stacks fresh. Now, you're probably already confused. Just remember that confuse gives them reduced turn meter up to 15%, starts at 6%, and then 3% for each additional stack of translation on C3PO. It says confuse. Detrimental effects build based on the cumulative number of stacks. So these are like the tokens. The first time you do this, they can't gain buffs when they have that confuse over their head. The second one you give them, which means, and by the way, on his basic, if he's called to assist, his basic will be used, which will just compound this immediately into the number 2 or number 3 slot. The second token is going to give them the ability to not be able to counter, assist, or gain additional bonus turn meter for raid bosses. That would be a negative 30% counter chance. And then for the third confuse token, or the third stack of confuse, it says when the character uses their basic ability, they increase all of their own cooldowns by 1. That's right. They use a basic and then it increases their specials. They use a basic, it increases their specials. It keeps them in a perpetual state of only being able to use their basic abilities. That's provided, obviously, that you don't cleanse off these 2 or 3 negative status effects, because they can be confused, can be cleansed. But basically, you're giving them this debuff, and the more you give the debuff, the stronger the debuff becomes. Now, the first special, the only special, is called, oh my goodness, it's got a cooldown of 4, and he gains potency up and stealth for 2 turns. So he becomes a character that basically can't be targeted. It says, then he and target other ally gain translation for 3 turns, and CPO inflicts confuse twice on a target enemy for 3 turns. So that's double stacks, or 2 tokens that it's going to apply for 3 turns on a target enemy, and then calls all other allies with translation to assist, dealing 50% less damage. So this is a call to assist, and if he goes last, everybody else gets to use their specials. They'll gain this translation buff, or this token of translation, and then he can call whoever doesn't have it. So if he's the second to last or last character, he's definitely, as long as everyone uses specials, he's definitely going to call a massive call to assist and instantly put the other opponent into multiple debuffs of the confuse. Now he has 5 uniques. This is pretty crazy. And the first unique we're going to go over is Protocol Droid. It says that C3PO has plus 20 speed. And while he's active, Galactic Republic, Rebel, Resistance, and Ewoks, yep, there we go, Ewok allies gain unique buff translation for 3 turns up to 3 times. Each time they use a special ability, they get this buff called translation. So translation is the positive buff for your team, and the confusion is the negative debuff for the other side. Again, they stack, or they get tokens, and the more tokens they have or the more stacks they have, the stronger the debuff or the stronger the buff becomes. Now, translation, when they do a special, they get this translation for 3 turns, and it says they gain, the first stack will gain 30% max health. The second translation token or stack they get gives them 15% critical chance. And then the third one says when C3PO uses his basic ability, it'll decrease this character's cooldown. So if they have 3 stacks of translation, they're going to constantly have their cooldowns reduced every time C3PO goes, which means you're going to want to call C3PO to assist, such as BB-8 or someone, so that way he's constantly reducing your own allies' cooldowns. Pretty crazy. Now, the unique second one, called Wait For Me, is C3PO and R2-D2, both, this is synergy with his buddy, are going to each have plus 10% evasion for each of their own stacks of translation. So that's up to 30% evasion on both of them. At the start of the encounter, C3PO and R2-D2 will instantly gain translation for 3 turns. When there are no other allied combatants, C3PO will escape from battle. So he's just like Hermit Yoda in that he can basically just escape if everybody else, if all the other combatants are no longer available, which means in the Sith raid, you'll be able to use him in multiple teams, just like Hermit Yoda. Now, he has lots more uniques. He has a third unique called Intermediary, and it says all allies, that's just all of them, no matter who, get plus 10% defense penetration, and each time a Galactic Republic or Ewok ally gains a different, non-unique, non-protection buff, they're going to gain 15% protection up for 2 turns. This does not stack with itself. Now, what's cool about this is, of course, we know Ewoks get tons of non-unique, non-protection buffs. They give them to each other using their basics, and so they're going to get a ton of protection up because of all of their basics giving each other buffs. It says also for each stack of translation, Galactic Republic have plus 10% defense penetration, and that 10% defense penetration will be doubled for Ewoks, so 20% defense penetration. And of course, all allies, no matter who they are, will have a minimum of 10%. Now, unique number 4 is final text, all allies have plus 10% potency. So they're adding potency to the whole thing. And whenever a rebel or an Ewok uses their basic, this is going to happen a lot, they inflict expose on a target enemy for 2 turns, which can't be evaded. This is crazy because this is giving now tons of synergy to the rebels and to the Ewoks with expose. It turns them into an exposed team, basically. So pretty awesome. For each stack of translation, that positive buff, rebel allies will also have plus 10% potency, and then it's doubled for Ewoks. Again, instead of getting just 10%, they're going to get 20% potency. And the last unique, if there wasn't enough, the last one's called Fretful Mediator, and it says all allies have plus 10% critical damage. That applies to the entire team. So you notice something, no matter who he plays with, he gives them 10% defense penetration, 10% potency, and 10% critical damage. But it gives you synergy bonuses based on whoever you're taking in. So this last one says whenever a Resistance or Ewok ally uses their special ability, they inflict offense down on the target enemy for 2 turns, which cannot be evaded. For each stack of translation, Resistance allies will get a plus 10% critical damage, and that's doubled for Ewoks. Now, something that's cool is unique 3, 4, and 5 all benefit the entire team. give additional benefits to like Galactic Republic, Rebels, or Resistance, but Ewoks actually get double benefits from all 3 of these uniques. Now it talks about synergy that the first squad it would probably be best in is going to be Jedi Training Rey, BB-8, R2D2, maybe General Kenobi or Amilyn Holdo, and then of course C3PO. With the second squad being probably Commander Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Chewbacca, Old Ben, and C3PO, and then possibly a Galactic Republic mix with like Rex and General Kenobi. And then C3PO and maybe like Han Solo and Chewbacca in the background for damage. They are going to work with Ewoks, but don't expect this to make the Ewoks totally and completely overpowered. Now we're going to go ahead and let the video footage finish off. I'm going to let you guys kind of watch it just so you can kind of see it in action. But long story short, he's got a bunch of synergies, a bunch of bonuses. He can escape from battle. His basic's going to apply a debuff. His special is basically he can give a bonus buff to all of his team. It gets better and better and better, and he applies a debuff that gets worse and worse and worse on the opponents, and he can essentially potentially lock out everybody on the opposing side to basics only with his debuff capability if he can get them to 3 and keep them there. Pretty crazy. Finish out the video footage. Leave in the comments what you think of C3PO. Pretty excited. He's got 2 Zetas. He's going to be a legendary, which means he unlocks at 5 stars, which means he should be relatively easy to get and start to gear. Obviously, to get to 7 stars, he should be probably gear 10, 11, or 12 for your characters. And he's got 2 Zetas, so hopefully you saved up some of your Zetas if you plan on unlocking and using him. I see him as someone who's going to help with all the different raids, help with territory battles, territory wars, and I think he just might find his way into a couple of arena teams, especially if you're in the top 200 or top 500. You're definitely going to start to see C3PO creeping his ugly way up all through the meta. And then lastly, I think he's going to have synergy possibly with a new ship coming down the road, so keep that in mind. And as always, keep your gaming on. Warrior out.
Very well. How dare you!